Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I think I've definitely got an intro now. I think I say that every single time. It's three hellos, and I go straight in. Yeah. This week we wanted to talk all about quiet luxury versus living just like an authentic life, and I think that's definitely specific to the way each of us maybe define what luxury is, how we've been raised, and also like our attitudes essentially to kind of like money and what is living authentically. Because if I think about living authentically, that might mean naturally for some people maybe a more luxurious lifestyle, and vice versa, right? It depends on how you define each of those terms, because I feel like authenticity and also luxury has not been created like equally in that way. Like, it's very subjective. So yeah, let's talk about what is a luxury lifestyle versus an authentic one. And if I think about my life, I think I really used to want a luxury. Well, when I say luxury, by the way, my definition of luxury is like time luxury, and like not having to be stressed about how much something is or the cost of something, and being able to just do what I want with my time. So when I was younger, I used to think, okay, I would be living the ultimate lifestyle if, or like my goals used to sit around being able to do what I want to earn money, but then also not need the money that I'm earning. And then also being able to like I've grown up in a household that really celebrated like birthdays and like Christmas, and like not in a religious way, but like big events throughout the year were celebrated with like gifts and things. So I really think about how much I can provide to others and the level of luxury associated with that. So like how much I can spend on like giving back to people in my life. And those are the kinds of things I associate with luxury. And before, a few years ago, honestly, like one of my business goals, not business goals, but I guess like money goals, I used to think, okay, if I ever earn like my dream amount of money, I really want like I wanted this like specific color of a specific bag. And in the last few years, I've been really like ruminating on that, because number one, I honestly am not much of a bag person. Like, I like a nice bag that goes with a nice outfit, but I don't know, I'm just not big into bags, right? And then secondly, I was like, well, why do I want a color that I don't even have in like most of my wardrobe, right? Because I picked this like burgundy color. So I really had to reflect on like why I wanted that. And was that me just thinking that like luxury equates like success, equates like also like because it was a handbag and it was a small thing, I was thinking like, oh, that's quite luxury because I'm going to be able to like use that all the time, and it's not like it's not filled with logos and all this kind of stuff. So I really had to think about like, okay, well, if I really want a full life, like a life I'm happy with, and it didn't revolve around getting this damn bag, what does it look like for me? Like, what does like an authentic version of success look like for me? So I really had to think about that, and I'm kind of still thinking about it. But for me, it does really revolve around like time freedom and like location freedom. And I feel like quiet luxury as a whole is kind of trending these days anyway, in terms of like, okay, well, we don't look at people who earn a lot and just expect to see loads of like designer logos or like flashy things anymore. It's like now I can look at someone and think, okay, are you at peace? Are you not actually stressed about your material items? And do you just like make decisions without thinking so much about the consequences of them? And I think, okay, maybe you're actually living your true life and you're actually like rich in that sense. But what do you think?
The way you were describing it almost feels like the ideal place to be, which is a hybrid of authentic living and the quiet luxury. Because to me, like, I totally agree with the sentiment that time freedom is the ultimate luxury for us all, and like that's something that's super important to me. But when I think about quiet luxury, I think it does really come down to like the opposite of being flashy with your money and like showing off how much you have. And I know, like, growing up, the idea of something being luxurious was always about like how expensive it was and how big the logo on it was, or like what brand it was, and that was always the focus. And I remember being like getting wrapped up in that idea of like having specific items because they symbolized a certain thing and because they meant that you seemed wealthy, even when I wasn't. So it wasn't even about like genuinely being wealthy and being able to afford these things. And then that's when you get into the business of buying fakes and duplicates of like these really expensive things, because that's not authentic living in itself. But then I wasn't living a quiet luxury life because there was no like wealth behind any of that anyway. So, but I think now when I look at it, and I kind of do aspire for that quiet luxury lifestyle because I like nice things, but I think also what is more important to me now is like the quality of things. So, but I think the better the quality, a lot of the time, the higher the price. So when I think about like my clothing, what's funny is I like growing up, I feel like I always really emphasized, or like, I don't know, I internalized this idea that paying the least for something that you liked was like something to be like really proud of. And even though that thing could be like really bad quality and like not the right material. So for example, like clothing, like if I went to Primark and I bought something that looked really nice, but it was obviously like really, really cheap because Primark is cheap, but the materials that they use are not that great for your skin. They don't last that long, but I would still be like happy because I got something that was cheaper than it looked. And that was always my focus. And now I think as I've got older, and I guess as my income's increased and as like my freedom of like choice has increased with it, I feel like I've shifted more into wanting to like invest in things, and like nice things that are gonna last me, things that I know are like good quality. Like I've been reading a lot lately. I don't know too much about it because it's still something that I feel like is quite new, people are talking about, and how the materials in your clothing affects like your health, like your body, like your physical health.
Oh, you mean like microplastics and all these kinds of things?
Yeah, but also like polyester and like these specific materials that are used in a lot of these like cheap clothing. And I say cheap very like not too strongly, because I know that there's a lot of brands that use these materials, but they actually hike the prices up and they're actually super expensive, but they're not even good materials. So I think that's the distinction in my mind that I'm making now, is like, it's not necessarily like about the price tag or about like the brand or where it's from. It's about what is the quality of that item and how is that improving my life. And I feel like when I used to get bogged down in like how expensive something was or kind of what it looked like on the outside, I never considered any of those things. I never ever looked at what material my clothes are made of.
Yeah, same.
Never. Like that never occurred to me. And now I'm like, how could I not? Like my mindset has completely shifted. And I feel like I would much be more inclined now to actually look at the material first before anything else. Obviously, like I'd have to like it to then look into it. But I think that would be something that I would consider more of like a quiet luxury way of living, because the thing might have a higher price tag and it might be more of an investment for me and it might be something I have to save for. But I've like bought it with intention, and I've bought it because it's for like a bigger purpose than just like, oh, this looks nice and it was the cheapest I could have possibly got it at, and I'll just like wear it for now and let it fall apart and then buy something else that's like trending later and nice in a new season. I feel like I want to start being more intentional about like what I buy, but obviously like, you need the money to do that, and I feel like that is I feel like that's definitely a luxury to be able to like, live like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've just pointed out like two of the biggest, I think in my head, the two of the biggest things that like divide a quiet luxury versus like living like your true values or like living more authentically. Like when you think about quiet luxury, you're thinking, okay, I want to buy less, but I want to buy higher quality. I want to buy better. And then if you're thinking about like, okay, how can I live more authentically, or like leaning into the underconsumption core stuff, you're thinking, well, why do I need to buy at all? Like, why do I need to add? How can I take away? And then what you just said there, it's like, okay, well, quiet luxury is talking about how you need to actually have almost like a trained eye, or like you need to think about your purchases. You have to think about the intention behind your buying habits and things like that. Whereas if you're thinking about living more authentically, you're asking yourself, well, why do I need to friggin' train my eyes to make a purchase? Like, why is that an issue? Like, why do I have to be the weirdo, like in the shop, like digging for the labels every time? Like, so I feel like that sometimes when I'm like shopping, and in my head I'm like, I wonder if this is 100% wool. Yeah, like my mom always used to say, she'd be like, oh, this is 100% cotton, or she'd be like, you should wear cotton in the summer or something. She'd always say like cotton, cotton, cotton. And I never clocked why. In my head, I just thought, okay, my mom loves cotton. And like maybe cotton is good like as bedding or for summer clothing, but I never understood why. And it's only now that I'm like, well, the fact that she bought 100% cotton is why she's had the same bed sheets for like 25 years and they look fine. They look new and they're easier to take care of and they're actually more comfortable to wear. I think what you said about like being more intentional about your purchases with quiet luxury, the luxury is in the fact, like for the intentional and more expensive and better quality purchases that I've made in recent years, the luxury lies in the fact that I buy once and I don't have to think about, number one, being warm in wintertime because I've invested into like cashmere and wool. Also, as a resident of Scotland, it's essential. And like that's like less decision fatigue that goes into not only, okay, when I wake up, I have to go somewhere. What do I wear? I don't have to think about it because I have one good cashmere sweater. It goes with everything. And then I also don't have to think about layering up loads because actually my 2 layers that are higher quality and like natural materials are they're actually going to keep me warm. So they're not only like intentional, I don't have to buy it all the time or like more frequently. They actually serve a function in my life, which I think is something we really need to think about when, like, if you're thinking about like luxury versus authenticity, with authenticity, you need to think like, well, do you have like any unmet needs in your life that a purchase is going to actually serve? And then quiet luxury is like, okay, well, when you make that purchase, is it actually functional? Or is it just like a decoration in your life? Like, is it just like a cherry on the cake? And is it just to show people, oh, I have the money to buy this, but I actually don't really need it, or I don't use it, or whatever it is, right? And I think with that stuff, it applies to things that are like cheap and quote unquote cheap and expensive, because people buy loads of things just for the sake of having them. And you know what I've had to really reflect on? I don't know if you've had to reflect on this as well, because I feel like because you started out, or you did a lot of like makeup content and stuff before, right? Like, what is your relationship with cosmetics and stuff like that? Because now if I look at my like makeup collection, I'm appalled at myself for like buying like 10 different lip glosses that all look the same once they're on my lips, right? Like, why did I convince myself that it was a good purchase, especially the like high end ones that are like more than £20, you know?
Well, I think, yeah, with makeup, because I did it as content, I was lucky enough that I did get gifted a lot of stuff. So I would trial and error things, but then I would know what I liked and I would just stick with it. And I literally would not budge from the same products for like years. And that would just be my routine. And I guess it was only more so when I used to do it more like as content and film more regularly, like different looks and things, that I used to consume a lot more makeup, because I would do like eyeshadow looks and the whole lot and like change my lip color all the time. But now I have literally one lip color that I wear all the time, and if it's like I want to have a more glam look, then I'll like change the liner or something. But it'll be very like subtle changes in my makeup, and I don't really stray away from like a certain look that I do or the products that I use, unless I see and I'm influenced by something online, and I'm like, oh, actually, I really need that in my life. Then I'll trial it, but I don't generally feel the need, unless I feel like it's lacking in my own makeup, or if something I run out of, and then if I felt like, oh, I didn't really like it enough to like go and buy it again, then I'll maybe try something new. But I don't have a real like need to, I don't know, like, yeah, buy loads of the same thing. But what I have noticed about myself when it comes to buying luxury or like buying things with a big price tag, I don't know why I've done this in the past, but I almost have felt like to justify spending the money, it has to be something that's like really like a statement. And I don't know why I do it, but it's like, so for example, if I was to go and buy something that was like a neutral color, and this is literally like the definition of quiet luxury, like very toned down, very like a coat, for example, that was like beige or black or like one of the standard colors, and it very much looked like what you could get on the high street, like in H&M or something, for example, I would like convince myself that was so pointless because I could get that same like thing, like kind of looking thing, very easily in another store that was significantly cheaper. So I almost convinced myself that I have to maybe go for, like you were kind of saying that you were going for a bag in like a color that wasn't even in your wardrobe. I feel like I do that a lot when I think about buying something more expensive. I'm like, well, maybe I should just get this in a completely different color than what I even would ever wear, because then it makes sense. Because I don't know. I actually don't know why that makes sense in my head. Out loud, it does not make any sense. But in my head, it just makes more sense because it almost feels like, oh, because it's different, it now makes it more warranted or worth it to spend that extra money.
Yeah. Oh, this is so hard because like I completely get where you're coming from, but I also cannot put into words why it makes sense.
I know. It's like I'm trying really hard to convey, like, it's so clear in my head, like, why that makes sense, but I can't put it into words. But that's something I definitely need to, like, overcome before I start investing into these, like, good quality pieces that I've been talking about. Because I think now that I've made the focus all about the materials and stuff, I think it'll be a bit easier. But I think in the past it's been difficult because I've been like, well, if I can get this in black in like a high street store, then maybe I should get it in purple and really expensive, because then it's going to be like, I don't know, a showcase item in my wardrobe. I don't know. I just feel like it has to have something more to it for me to justify like, oh, I've spent this much money on it and it's like a wow item now. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But then at the same time, I do like the idea. So the whole idea of combining and hybriding the whole like authentic living, because I feel like when it comes to fashion, authentic living is like developing your own style, right? It's not like, I guess the quiet luxury is the minimalistic, like beige tones or like no logos and stuff. But authentic living, you can really like bring your personality out in your clothes, and I feel like that's why it's like nice to be able to mix the two. And I don't think one trend is like, I don't know, I prefer more than the other. I like the idea of finding my own style, making sure they are good quality pieces with like good materials, but also like not being afraid to wear stuff that, I don't know, it doesn't have to all be beige and black and white. But I also feel like that's a journey in itself, like finding what your style is versus like, oh, but now this is what's trending. And like, do you see every season, like you get told what color you should be wearing, like on TikTok and things, and I'm like, but I don't want to wear that, so now what?
Yeah. I find that so hard because like I used to be someone, like I used to have prints and loads of color in my wardrobe, and it would be really overwhelming to get dressed. But then it would also be like annoying because you can only wear like a color combination and a print so many times as well, which isn't true. I mean, like, I'm kind of walking myself into like overconsumption here, but like there's nothing wrong with wearing patterns more than
We have
once.
staples for a reason, I guess. Like you'd have your items in certain tones that could go with multiple different things. But I feel like I want to tell myself that I can still get these like statement pieces, or maybe like, I don't know, a furry jacket that looks really cool that I can also accessorize with, or like even, yeah, just accessories in general. I feel like that is like the authentic way of like blending like your own personality and style into your
Yes, I
wardrobe.
completely agree. I think like you can tell someone's personality through their accessories, like especially someone who's like who understands their, I guess, their style and like their own wardrobe. And I've started to notice that with myself. Like I love really like tailored and plain like outfits, but sometimes my accessories will be like, ooh, a bit like, ooh, you didn't expect
Hello.
that. Like a little extreme pointed toe, or like a color that you weren't expecting, like just pops up. And I really like that way of combining the two, because like both of them are authentic, but you don't necessarily need like, you don't really necessarily need to invest into any of those things. And actually, just to come back on like quiet luxury being an investment, I actually think, because I was about to say, oh well, when you understand your style and you understand your wardrobe, then you can like invest into like better versions of those things. But then I just checked myself and I was like, well, if the stuff in your wardrobe is actually serving a purpose in terms of like, okay, well, 5 years ago you didn't really understand like clothing compositions and all these kinds of things, so you do have like 100% plastic wardrobe, which I have. Like 50% of my wardrobe is like stuff that I've had for a really long time that is not the best composition, but they still, like, I still wear them, they still last, like they'll last as long as they will last. Like I don't need to now, just because maybe I have the funds or I have the knowledge, I don't have, like, no one's forcing me to actually go and upgrade the item into like a better quality one or not. So I think there's also a case of like living authentically also means like really thinking about why you're making a purchase and whether you need to, like, the purchase itself, not like the item, because you might, the one you have is probably fine. You just have to wait till it does eventually like fall apart because it is plastic, and then at that point, you know, okay, I've worn this thing like 1,000 times, I can now maybe get like a better version, and I don't have to get it in like bright green because I know I won't wear it in bright green or something like that, which is quite, I feel like that's like quite a comforting thought for like anyone listening who's thinking, oh my god, well, does quiet luxury now mean I have to like upgrade my entire wardrobe into like higher quality things and like just live with that for the rest of my life? Because I thought that at one point as well, and I don't think that's necessarily the case.
No, that's really true. I think it applies to like so many areas of life as well. Like one thing I've been looking at recently is like even decorating my home. And you know, like there's so many trends on, I guess the quiet luxury version is just the very minimalistic, which I love. And I think from living somewhere where I had like very bulky furniture and things, I'm really excited to like go back to being a bit more minimal with like furniture items and even colors and things. But I also have been thinking from like a more authentic living perspective is when it comes to, what do you call it when you like decorate your home with things? What are they called? You know, when you have like, I don't know, vases or like decorative items, those things, whatever that category of home decor is called. When I've been thinking of like what I would do about things like that, I definitely been thinking about like implementing more like culture, or I don't know, just making it a bit more like authentic to me, but combining the two, because I really like the idea of being minimal and having like, I don't know, like neutral colours vibes. But I also really like it when people have in their homes like stuff that is really related to like their culture, and you can like tell it's a cultured home. And I think I didn't really do that in my flat at all. Like when when I lived on my own for about 3-4 years, it was very much my first time like having my own property, and I never really experimented with the decor in that way. I was very much like quite quick in my decisions just based on what I thought just looked clean and presentable, and I didn't think beyond that. But now looking at like decorating my home, I feel like I want to mix like the quiet luxury and like have those pieces that are like good quality and not like super flashy and in your face, but obviously, well, home furniture and things are expensive regardless of where you get it from. Like, I don't really think there's such a thing as a cheap sofa so much, because even a cheap sofa is like a good few £100s. So I think when it comes to like even decorating your home, have you tried to like implement, I don't know, culture or just like you authentically in like your living space, or has it always
home is a different one, because I think for me, I've had so much like genuine just like crap around me every time I'm in all of my living places. I'm like just super cluttered. Like I've hoarded things. When I left home, I took everything I owned, and I've like struggled to like actually get rid of everything since then. And it's something I really have been thinking about, like especially recently. And it's funny you brought this up, because I was on Pinterest like a few weeks ago, and I fell into a Pinterest hole of like South Asian inspired like homes, but they weren't in India. Some of them were in some of the homes were actually in India, but some of them were also like big fancy LA homes and things like that, and they'd taken like inspiration from like temples and like using teak wood and things like that. And I just thought it was so nice. Like that is such a nice like, I don't know, like homage to your own upbringing and actually acknowledging where you've come from. And I thought that was it. I don't know, it just made me feel really nice. And I thought, okay, well, I would love to be able to do that and actually think a bit more about how I decorate my home. But I think that's such a good point, because like you can really tell someone thinks critically when they don't have those three like, have you seen those like three like typical Swedish prints that you can like put in your living room? People always just like, they buy a home and they go straight to this one print website, buy these 3 prints, frame them and put them up in their living room. And I'm always like, you like, please just like think.
I think it's because it's like you see it so often online and people just like copy that. And I think for a long time, when I was thinking about decorating my home, and I know it's a lot easier when you've actually like got a new like blank canvas to work with, because that's why I've been thinking about it so much. But I think when you do take inspiration just randomly and you just think like, you don't really think about like why you want certain things in your home. You just think, oh, well, they've got that and it looks nice and it looks put together, so I'll have it too. You don't really, and things can be also trending when it comes to home decor as well. Like things go out of fashion or out of season. So I think that's why it can also be a quite luxury kind of way of doing it, where it can't really go out of fashion if you're doing it like the cultured, authentic way, because that's just the standard that you're setting for your home. So I like that way, but that's certainly something I've very recently started thinking about. Because beforehand I was thinking very much like just this modern, clean look, very neutral. But it's also not very homely at the same time. But I was thinking, how do I make it homely? And I think that is the way, like, I think adding culture and that authentic like element to it is how you do live, like, and just in general as well, like aside from fashion and clothes and like home and like the things that you have in your life, I feel like you do have to have a balance between like what makes you feel good. So if it's the quiet luxury like lifestyle that makes you feel really good and confident about your life, but then you also have to have the element of like, oh, but is that what you're doing or what you're buying or what you're surrounding yourself with really authentic and like matching you as an individual and what you like?
Yeah.
And
also, is it
what
for you?
Yeah. Because if you don't have, I feel like you could live without the quiet luxury. I feel like there's a certain type of person that will be into that, because there's a lot of like eccentric people that love living their authentic way and they don't care about being, I don't know, minimalistic or whether they're too flashy or not and all that stuff. So I feel like you can definitely live your authentic living lifestyle quite happily. But I think maybe a certain type of person who wants to be, I don't know, more quiet luxury-esque, I still feel like it's very important to still like feed in the authentic side as well, because otherwise you just end up kind of just copying what you see. It's again another form of adding a logo to something, I think.
Yeah, that's such a good way to put it. Yeah, totally agree. I think even with quite like, if genuinely when I think of quiet luxury, I think of like I don't think of the neutral tones and like the simplicity and things. I think about someone's like really peculiar, like well-tailored coat with like a lapel I've never seen before, and I'm like, okay, that must have cost like £10,000, but it looks like an everyday coat. Like that's what I think when I think about quiet luxury. And even when I think about like someone's home, probably like, I don't know, custom made like cabinets made from a specific wood or something like that, where it looks it looks like you could buy it anywhere, yet you cannot find it anywhere, and you cannot buy it everywhere. Like that's the kind of thing I think about. So yeah, that's how I see the way that you can combine living authentically with the quiet luxury. Like you don't have to pick a lane almost. It's not like you can't be authentic but not be minimal, but also be authentic and be minimal. Like it's like you can actually pick what you want from the two. But that's how I've always defined quiet luxury in my head, with it being trending recently. Okay, so as we wrap up then today's episode, something to consider. If you take the best of both worlds, how can you take like the mindfulness? How can you appreciate your quality? And how can you actually think about what's actually adding a functional, like intentional value to your life, and whether you actually need to spend money on it or not? There's literally no right or wrong answer with these trends, is there? But
no, it's just opinion based.
Yeah, it's completely opinion based. But yeah, thank you for listening. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to follow us and give us a little rating. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment as well if you enjoyed this one. And we will catch you next week. Bye.